How are you doing?
We're cooking. I had a little bit of a boomer moment there.
No worries. I messed up because I didn't I left the other link on there. That's me just getting used to the Google Meet and all of that
Oh,
stuff.
good. No, and I have an external camera, and I was trying to connect to this, and it kept like yelling at me. So I'm on the trusty Logitech webcam.
Oh, sweet. Totally okay. I just appreciate you being here. I know we're on different time zones. You've got a lot coming your way, and you made it a priority to get on here, so I really appreciate it. Welcome to
Yeah,
the
and
Board Game Secret Show, I'll say.
no, thanks for shooting me a message and inviting me. And I have no hard stop, so if we go a little over, no worries.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I've been trying to rein these in. They just kind of have tended to meander a bit. I mean, I personally like that type of conversation, but you know,
I can
we'll
ramble. I
yeah.
so yeah yeah.
I think that's what kind of all the YouTubers have in common a little bit, right? Is the is the ability to ramble on, especially the things that they love, which is board games.
Yes.
All right. So I guess we'll just jump right into it, and we're just going to start. First of all, tell us about yourself. I want to know about the origin story of Board Game Apprentice, and most importantly, why are you just an apprentice?
So this is going to be a little bit of a corny response, right? It's kind of like you're always kind of learning, always something new to discover and learn. So I just felt like that was an appropriate way. And when I started this channel, I mean, I think I was only like a year into playing games, and the hubris to start a board game YouTube channel with only a couple months really of experience. But I think it was just a way to like catalog playing games and exploring them and having like an outlet to talk about them. And I think I started getting into it, I think like a lot of folks in that like COVID period, you're indoors a lot, you're kind of starved for that like, face-to-face interaction, and then things open up. It's like, wow, this whole world of board games is really cool and kind of exploded. The origins, I guess, of where I got any kind of foothold with my channel was with Final Girl. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a solo horror board game.
Yeah, and in looking at your channel, how could I not be familiar with it, right? Like,
Yeah,
you
so
have many of your videos are Final Girl, which we'll talk a little bit about. But yeah, I could see that's a passion for sure.
Yeah, so outside of board games, I'm really big into horror movies and media and stuff, and Final Girl marries that really well. And I feel like I had something to say about it. So I made a couple of guide videos and stuff that got good traction, and I'm kind of happy with the community I've kind of gotten with the solo game, especially where, sometimes it's just like not a part of, it's in the name, right? You're doing it by yourself. So it's cool to have a solo game community around that.
Yeah, you actually knocked out a couple of questions in one, but we'll dig a little bit deeper there. So like the next idea was, was there a specific game, maybe Final Girl, that really got you kind of like excited about the hobby? Like that for me, Wingspan, I just seen what a production could be on a board game. I had no idea that could possibly exist. What was it for you that just kind of, or maybe it was a slow kind of marination?
Yeah, I think as a kid, I always had a knack for board games, like the traditional Life, Monopoly, Operation, all that sort of stuff. And I feel like it was always in the back of my head. And right around like 2012 or so, I was like graduating high school. I started going to like, I would say like general nerd conventions, like Comic-Con sort of things. And in a lot of those conventions, like board game is usually like a little chunk of it. Like there's a room with board games, there's like sessions and that sort of thing. And I feel like over those years, I started to get into more modern board games, I'd say. And actually the one that kind of started to really kick things off was King Domino. I'm not sure if you played
Really?
that one.
Rolling Reggie made me play that. Actually, I've definitely it's super familiar. I hadn't played it up until very recently, actually.
Yeah, and I think what it did is, it takes that core Domino's traditional game system and does some cool stuff with it. And I think that was like, hey, there's a whole lot more to explore here. And there was something about King Domino that kind of hit the right spot for me that I think really started to get me more interested in exploring games.
Have
And
you
actually,
tried
I
the
have
new
one
Steam app by any chance on King Domino?
No, I
Yeah,
have not. Is that
it's
good
actually really cool.
implementation?
Yeah, it's actually really cool. Well animated. You were gonna say, sorry.
Yeah, no, I have a funny story, and it's actually right over here. where I made a classic mistake, and I think I was like I must have. This is like the first convention and then there's a company called Greenbrier Games was there, and they made this game called Zapocalypse, and it's kind of a trashy zombie dice chucking game. But I remember kickstarting this in like 2013. The classic
Really?
mistake of like being a new board gamer and kickstarting something, which now we know better, of course. But that game as well, it's kind of like a dumb dice chucking miniature kind of thing. But I think on the other side of like, hey, King Domino is this cool, elegant game. This was like, hey, look at this production, look at these minis of zombies and all this kind of cool stuff. I would say that's like the second game that really kicked things off for me.
So you played King Domino pre 2013.
No, I think King Domino came after.
Okay.
I would say that's what got me more into like, who are these designers? Like, it got me more like, I would say like quote unquote serious into playing board games. I think Apocalypse for me was like the, hey, look at how cool these and fun, like that kind of like toyish these can be sometimes, and
Right.
The kind of like grandness that a board game can kind of have.
And how that has changed. It just gone to the absolute extreme. In fact, I was just watching your Terrascape unboxing and seeing how insanely large that box was when it came to your house with all of the stuff. Like it's amazing. Where do you like that aspect still? Do you think it's gone overboard? I mean, a lot of people kind of have like these negative perspectives on all of the glut that comes out of Kickstarter, but it comes because people buy it. So it's like there's a demand for it, otherwise they wouldn't make it. So like, what's your perspective there?
Yeah, so I think I try to be pretty discerning with games if I'm going to get like the miniatures and the boxes and the kind of like investment you get, like the plastic. Like, I think a lot of like the CMON stuff is like the classic example, right? And I do have like, and I try to choose like one or two games that if I'm going to get into it, like I'm going to like really indulge and like get the upgrades and all that cool stuff. So I think that there's definitely a place for it. I think the maybe over investing in a lot of them, right? Like realistically, right? There's only so much time to play things.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's value if it's a game at a core level that you love going all the way into it. But, is there another kind of side of it that's like, hey, this is a cool model and I want to have it. And then it like kind of sits in a box somewhere, right?
Oh, 100%.
The darker side of it where it just kind of goes to waste, which is a shame.
Yeah, I think the tricky part is I think we probably all have had the situation where you invest in the thing and it's just not as good as the beautiful images would have led you to believe. And when I say as good, the actual gameplay, actually playing with the thing. Yeah. But then I've also had, I don't know if you've had this, where I'll get a game and after I've learned my lessons and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to go all in. And then I just kick myself because I love that thing and I wished I would have gotten it. And they're strict on this was only for a campaign and maybe another one comes along, but then you have to wait another year to get the original thing. Like, have you come across that trap at all?
It was something recently. I think it was Old King's Crown. Like that made the rounds and I'm a fan of asymmetrical games and you can get a group excited about it. Like you can have a lot of fun with those types of games. Yep. And that was one where it's like, oh man, I remember seeing it like years ago. It's like, oh, now it's coming around again. I guess that's kind of the beauty of Kickstarter too, where if there's that demand for it, like there's usually space for it to come back around.
But that lead time is so long. When everyone's so excited. Old King Crown is one of them. I didn't jump on board and I have not ever played it. So it's like I should have known. I love asymmetry. That's on me.
Yeah, and one more recently, and as a horror fan, I don't know what it was like over summer, I was just like not paying attention to it, was the reprint of Camp Grizzly, which is like, I think it's from Trick or Treat Studios. It's an older game that they're bringing back, but it's kind of like a slasher cooperative thing, like just kind of up my alley, kind of like silly horror stuff. And they just did not do late pledges for it. Like they closed that campaign, and you were not able to order after.
Good for them.
Man,
you got to give them some respect on that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like
that's it.
I mean, that is what Kickstarter's for. It is kind of annoying. Like Into the Unknown will keep their pledge manager and the price just goes up and up and up and up and it's open for like 3 years. It's just, I mean, they at least will raise the prices so you do feel like you get some sort of value. On the other hand, when I'm late to something, it, it's tough because there's so many FOMO tactics in the middle of these campaigns, and then to leave it open for so long, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, oh well, maybe I had more time to make to make a decision. So tell me a
Do you have
little about. Go ahead.
No, I was curious if you had any ones that got away games over the years that you remember.
There's been a lot lately. The most recent was Cretaceous Rails. That one has eluded me. It's something that I would have bought because my wife loves route building in general. I love what route building, and I have much more success getting a game to the table consistently if it's visually impressive.
For sure.
That's just kind of the game group, right? So and then I saw it at Dice Tower West, and the table presence was just beautiful.
For sure,
um
yeah.
Terrorscape as well, which I want to talk to you about, also was in the hot games area with this big mansion or haunted house, whatever it is, on the middle of the table. And I was like, what is that? It's honestly the first time it had like clicked, like that looks like that could be a pretty cool game. I just overlooked it during crowdfunding. But there's been so many. I've also gone from like, there's only so much money, and I have to like put it into areas that really for the channel like would return some sort of content pretty quickly. So I've been more on, unfortunately, chasing the things after they've come out. I overpaid on Seventh Citadel, huge, and I hated the game. That was a big time burn. What was it? There was something else that I just went way too big on. I can't even remember it now. Anyways, I had stopped backing so many things just to not have so much money tied up, because when I first came in, it really heavily was the 2020 era where like it seems like that's where the crowdfunding really just exploded with popularity, and I backed way too many things in which I had no business in backing. I would have never had a game group to do so. So it's like those early lessons learned have stopped me from backing a ton of stuff. But I just have to be okay with getting burnt, I guess.
I feel yeah. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, it is. I think it's like a really familiar arc for a lot of hobbyists, especially ones that have come in during this kind of crowdfunding era of games where, like it or not, some companies probably abuse your free interest, no interest loan, and throw in all of the FOMO tactics. But I'm a believer, like, hey, free market. If there's a demand, have at it. Like, you'll learn your lesson eventually. Maybe it'll take a full year cycle, and then you'll still have like 6 or 7 projects outstanding that you have to wait to come in, if they do come in.
I will say that I have never had a completely unfulfilled project. Like, I will just say that is my one lucky thing that I have not had to deal with before.
I think I have Robot Quest Arena might not get fulfilled at this point. I think I've seen some stuff on them having a hard time, which is a real shame because I really like that game. I've done a few different videos on it, and it's just like, it's perfect. It's such a cool game, and the new content, the new cards, the new robots. They gave me some like some preview stuff, 3D printed stuff, looks so good. So I really hope that thing gets fulfilled. For the most part, though, there might have been a Elf Creek campaign that I didn't get.
Oh yeah. Well, those got saved, right?
Yeah, they might be still getting saved. I can't even remember. Or you know what? I think I canceled it because it took so long, and they, to their point, they were, it was Merchants of the Dark Road that like everything had actually come to retail, basically all the deluxeified stuff that I could technically get for cheaper, and they still hadn't fulfilled people, and that really pissed me off. But it's hard. I get it. It's tough for these companies, and a lot of them aren't, their core function isn't business. It's making cool games, and that business part comes at a high cost, especially when tariffs and COVID and all of that other stuff happens. So I think we've all learned that. Where do you see kind of like crowdfunding going in the future? do you feel like it's going to continue to pull back a little bit or ramp
You
back
know,
up?
I kind of see it maybe transforming more into a pre-order system, like what we saw with was it Labyrinth, the new Labyrinth, I think,
Mm,
where that turnaround, I forgot what it was, like a couple months or something, maybe not even that, where it was kind of like front loading those orders as, you know, and obviously the production is pretty ready to go. But I
right.
could see it maybe shifting more into a kind of a quicker turnaround rather than these long 3 to 5 year cycles that we see with some games. Just because
Right.
I think from 2020 to 2025, right, the amount of crazy and instability that could happen over that time period, like how could you possibly plan for a campaign even over 2 years, right? Like things are just so volatile right now. I feel like a project maybe has to have some faith in how much it's going to get backed and maybe even be in some type of production level. And you kind of have that audience that you're going to rely on and then kind of ship it out more quickly. I just don't see
Yeah.
long-term projects really being feasible, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. I think it has been the problem is there's so many promises that are made up front with a game that's not even fully developed yet. Like in
Yeah.
Cardboard, I'm working on kind of a rating system around these campaigns, and it gives points for rulebook and more points for TTS if you have a playable demo. Like to me, if I were to start my own crowdfunding site, I would, and this would be popular to the people, but probably not to the publishers. I would absolutely require there's a playable demo. You know, anyone that doesn't have a rule book would be laughed out of the room. Like that's just like ridiculous. Like, how are you selling me on a game that that you don't have the rules for yet? I think some companies can do it, you know, because they have an insane track record. Chip Theory is typically like totally behind on any sort of production, or has been in the past, around rules and not being able to share everything. Leader Games as well, I've kind of come across that, but it's like, you know, those are giants that we know will fulfill. We know they have cash. We know they have clients, but like the tough part is the little ones where Kickstarter is actually made for.
Yep.
They suffer the most, but they're also the most risky. You know, that's the tricky part is we've like gotten away from it is actually a pre-order system, not really a crowdfunding campaign. Many of these publishers 100% could fund the project. It's just a really great way to get funding, which is super important, right? You know, they need the loans, like they need to flip that money around if they can't get the loan, and kind of fund their next project. I know there's definitely a lot of balance there, but I don't know. I hope it doesn't go away. I think it's ultimately good for the hobby because it creates excitement. You know, the FOMO, I think, is actually a good thing. You know, when you start to have that type of excitement in the hobby, it's you can't really say it's bad unless it's a huge sum of unfulfilled promises.
Yeah, and I think FOMO is kind of maybe becoming one of those words that's overused. Like some things that maybe aren't truly
It's
quote
marketing.
unquote FOMO versus
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I think the reality of hey, you got to try to sell your project.
Right.
I think there's some practices that are maybe better than others, but I think there's definitely a space for, like you said, building that excitement. And I think maybe as a general trend, I think just smaller projects probably, or less, you know, sculpting and miniatures like that, kind of more hefty. And again, I'm pretty ignorant to the overall process that goes into it, but how many projects have you been on where it's like every update is like there's a new mold that has been made, or there's a new model, there's a new file that's out. It's like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But I think maybe smaller projects that are able to, again, like a quicker turnaround, I think is like the ultimate goal, I hope, for crowdfunding.
Yeah, I also hope, and it's probably not going to happen, and this is something that I want to try to measure in campaigns going forward as well, is like how much are they telling the story about the game versus the stuff, right? Like,
Yes.
ultimately that game has to be fun to play. Otherwise, you go sell toys, right? And if you look at many of these campaigns, you can just go forever, and it just barely tells you about the game. And that's where I think the rule book and the demo and all that stuff is super helpful. And some companies definitely do it. Like, you know, Into the Unknown has TTS demos that you can go play on their games when they're being crowdfunded. Like that's, you know, for such a huge investment, I better be able to understand how this thing is going to feel on the table. That's another one that's burnt me. Not burnt me I've wanted Aeon's Trespass, I've wanted Kingdom Forlorn, and I've just had such a hard time not pulling the trigger on those. Kingdom Forlorn in particular recently, I was just so close, but like the shipping charge was just astronomical. I literally had it in the cart so many times looking at it for like this 2-week period and just never did it. Any of those ever like tempt you? There's some.
No, I don't want to make it sound like I'm not like a fan of big games, but like I have not gone all in on like a huge like an Awakened Realms or like the companies that are kind of known for making these massive cool big productions. I really have not. I guess Final Girls, like I have a couple, like that's probably like if I look at like my biggest shelf hogs, I would say Terrascape too. But I would say that
I saw
Final
that.
Girls.
I was gonna bring that one up.
That's a lot of boxes. Like I think I definitely am interested in some of them, but like those huge campaign games, I just have not really bitten the bullet and gotten into one, to be totally honest.
Yeah, I really haven't either. I think the Aeon's Trespass was the one that I really wanted to. I'm glad I didn't because of the rules. And then Kingdom Forlorn sounded like they were going to streamline things a lot, make it much easier for a solo player, because that's how I would never play any of those with anybody else. I just wouldn't have the time to sit down with somebody else that doesn't live with me to actually do something like that. But yeah, I agree with you there. Like I've literally run out of space as well. Like I don't know where I'm going to put any more games. That is a limiting factor for sure.
Yes, but I don't want to hear. My wife shouldn't hear this part of the conversation because it's out of control, right? We did a whole like built-in bookshelf process, and like 2 of the bookshelves are just dedicated to games. It's like it's getting out of control. I got to like set a limit at some point.
Yeah, you really need like the stacked bookshelves, like the library where they like slide on rails so you can just like sort through them. Like that's my dream. But I also need a lot more square footage to ever fit anything like that. But yeah, it does get a little bit silly. Speaking of solo, it seems like you are a big solo gamer. I mean, maybe it's just because I see so much content on Final Girl. Your best video, I think, is 67,000 views, which is insane, which is, I believe, your top 10 solo games. Like, do you experience gaming mostly solo, or like how does that balance work for you?
No, it's funny because I am a very much a solo gamer of choice, I think, and I feel like I've kind of fallen into the solo world. I have like 2 very good game shops near me that we do like weekly, sometimes bi-weekly game nights, and like I play plenty of multiplayer stuff. I think for me, just a lot of like at evening time, like kind of downtime has just turned into solo gaming is kind of just where I ended up doing it. I used to be very big into like video games and still am, but a lot of that downtime is just kind of turned into solo games. And I like that you kind of have ultimate control over, like I can leave it up on like a side table and I can just go play it and then stop. And yeah, I just like that freedom you have to like play it and at your own pace, really. So I think, and also I think solo games, for me at least, there's just like a special charm about them because like any multiplayer game is just going to be group dependent, right? And sometimes you have an awesome group, sometimes like you're not always like best, you're not always having the best chemistry with players. I think something I love about solo games is that you really have that control. Like you want to play music, you want to eat snacks, you want to do whatever you want playing the game, you kind of have full control over that situation.
You can like take it nice and slow as well.
Yes. You want to fudge a little bit. No one's watching. Unless I'm recording, then I do. I get snapped at.
And you will hear about it if you do make a mistake. I don't know if you've had that same experience. I stopped doing a lot of playthroughs because of that. It was so rough. It's especially chips. I was doing a lot of chip theory playthroughs, and there's some passionate fans that will let you have it. And I always tell them, go film yourself, go back and watch it and count the number of mistakes you make, because you would be astonished how many times you're making mistakes on games.
Yeah, and this is inside baseball, I guess, but editing playthroughs is a nightmare. You got to put like little pop-up notes of like, hey, I did this wrong. Worst. I know. Like,
that's like where I started, was Too Many Bones playthroughs, and I thought like, oh, I'm just going to be the best editor and like make these amazing playthroughs. And then it's just like 15 hours later of editing. And then like, oh, seeing some, like, there's nothing more, like, there's nothing worse than watching your playthrough and getting the sinking feeling where you're like, oh, I made a massive mistake that totally changed the outcome
Oh,
of the game. I'm going to hear about this. Ugh.
yeah,
Luckily, a lot of them, I would make mistakes that would actually hurt me. So that's helpful.
yeah, yeah. You can always take it on the chin and say, "Hey, it's not making my life any easier doing this."
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
I will quickly say, I think from the content creation standpoint, it's also just like a lot easier to do solo content, right? I don't have to like wrangle other players, and I don't even know how I would ever go about that. So I think it's just from a content perspective too. It's nice to do solo stuff. It's just a lot more convenient.
I would love to have the setup to be able to do multiplayer content. I'm in a shed basically. I've retrofitted a shed and converted it in my backyard as like my office, and it would be an awfully it would be a really tight shot that I have to have a really wide angle lens to fit everyone in. But I agree. I've done probably a lot more solo content than I would naturally have like chosen, because it's also way easier to deep dive. Like I did a 100-hour Elder Scrolls video where I couldn't spend 100 hours in any other game in any like reasonable amount of time to like do some sort of project like that.
Yep.
It just makes it naturally, I don't know, easier. So I totally get that there. I will say, in the beginning and learning about solo games, I would just be like, you play this by yourself? It just felt so like anticlimactic, because you're literally like make believing in your head and going through the motions, and depending on the type of the game, it could just be like a math problem. You're like, oh, I'm definitely going to lose this, and I don't even have to play through. I don't know. It was hard. It was hard for me to like make that solo connection to board games. I played tons of video games solo, but it was different because it was playing it for you as opposed to you sitting there and moving the pieces around.
Yeah, and I will say, and if I start soapboxing too long, let me know.
No, do it.
I think a lot of the favorite solo games I have are, I think, quote unquote, like random. Like, Final Girl is a very dice-driven game. I think Under Falling Skies and some of these other solo games I really enjoy are they tend to be dice-driven, and I find that little bit of like randomness, and you're able to tell those stories, and it kind of, a lot of Euros. Maybe like a lot of them have solo modes, but a lot of them can feel kind of mechanical in how you're playing them. Like games that have those emergent moments, I think really lend themselves well to playing solo and kind of building that story as you're playing through it.
Oh, 100%. Like I hate a solo mode in any sort of Euro. I love Euros in general. I love the crunch. I play a lot of that with my wife, but I just can't stand any sort of solo mode with a Euro, because it does feel very procedural, not particularly exciting. That effect where you could go and see that there's not enough turns, you're not going to hit the point, threshold that you have to hit. The Automa is running away with it, as opposed to I'll go back to Too Many Bones again. That one roll that you have at the end of the game trying to beat the boss, and you hit it or you don't, or whatever it might be, it actually creates the excitement that just wouldn't be there. But I know tons of people love to experience solo games in Euros. I just don't understand why, unless it's just necessity. Nobody else wants to play that boring Euro with them or whatever. Do you play anything like that? Do you play much?
Yeah, there's a couple I make an exception for. So like one of my I think my favorite Euro of all time is, I think, Orleans is my favorite, and that actually has a pretty robust solo mode. So that's a Euro that I think still keeps that excitement going.
Well, there is the bag building and pulling it out. There is the randomness of like, are you going to get the right thing? So it still has that DNA.
Yeah, but a lot of the time it's like you said, a little bit of a learning tool. I think solo modes are super helpful for that, though. Just being able to run through a game yourself and get ready to teach it, especially a larger, more involved game.
Yeah. I actually found you with your, I thought was excellent coverage. I believe it was of PAX Unplugged. I really enjoyed that. I saw that you went to Circle DC. Is that focused on historical and war games?
Yeah. So that is
it's a pretty different world from Final Girl.
Yeah, and I think leaning into the apprentice thing of it, I think I really consider myself like an omnivore gamer. Like I am
Mhm.
literally I'm willing to play pretty much anything at least
Yeah,
once.
same here.
Um, and I think wargaming is like its whole almost separate from board gaming in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of games that bridge that gap.
Mhm.
Um, but I think going to Circle and Circle DC, right? I think their most famous game is Votes for Women, and that's kind of like a card-driven area control kind of game. But I think they, as a company, do a really good job of making war games that bridge the gap and are approachable. Like there's not 1,000 chits in the game, and I think a lot of the
Yeah.
stereotypical war game type stuff. Um, but I think that the way they're able to pull gameplay narrative out of like real world events. There's just something fascinating about wargaming in that perspective to me.
Mhm.
Almost divorced from the actual gameplay. I'm almost like more fascinated by the designers who like pick this very specific event and were like, I'm going to
Mhm.
make a game about this. And I just think there's something really cool about that story and how these games kind of come to life.
Yeah, I admire that sort of connected Whirligig and like John Company, PAX Premiere, like utilizing historical events and trying to design a game around it that people will actually. I guess Cole would say he doesn't care that people have fun, but that will represent those historical events and try to tell the story of that thing. And that it's interesting because you can't control the outcome per se, and that historical event had a very specific outcome. So like designing around all of that seems like a really interesting problem to tackle. Wargaming something that I would if I had any sort of connection whatsoever, I would absolutely probably just go super deep into it. I love Root, and what a perfect like gateway drug to
Yeah.
to wargaming. Root would probably be it. But yeah, I would definitely be down to go to a convention to kind of experience that world. Is that something you're trying to dig into any more in the future?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not going this year because I my first kid is going to be born any day now. So I
Congratulations,
think
by the way. Congratulations,
no,
by the way.
thank you. It's
And
going to
your
be
solo game career is over as well, by the way. So
yeah, I'm going to be up by
we'll
candle
see
like
you
trying
in a
to
while.
play games. I've stockpiled some videos.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
right. I hope a lot because you're about. So this is your first kid, by the way.
yeah, yep, first one.
Do you know boy or girl yet, or have you shared
No,
that?
we're gonna go surprise for the first one.
Wow, that's pretty amazing there. Well, I'm at the end of my journey there. They're in high school, and that's what's given me the space for this hobby and this channel and all of these kind of like selfish pursuits that I have. I don't know how I could have done it. Video games were all I could do then as like the sanctuary, when I had a few minutes or wanted to stay up late or didn't have the night duty or whatever it might be. So good luck with all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, if I disappear for a little bit, no, everyone will know why.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So do you plan on trying to continue going with this channel
Yeah,
with as a new
I mean,
father and all of that?
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go into it optimistically, I think, and just try again. This parenting podcast now.
Hmm.
I think the philosophy of like trying to have your kid kind of fit your lifestyle, like obviously supporting and providing for them, but trying to have them adjust to your life and not kind of bending over backwards necessarily like 24/7. And again, this is the naive words of a first time parent, but I think I'm gonna do my best to try to fit it in, and maybe the way I cover games will change maybe, but maybe like long 1 to 2 hour long playthroughs might be tough to do to get a silent space. But yeah, there's no intention to kind of stop doing stuff on the channel. I think I enjoy doing it too much.
Are you going to any conventions this summer in light of this?
No, I was planning to go to Gen Con still. I didn't get a press pass, which is very sad. But I think I'm going to go to PAX. So I live like half an hour away from Philly. So I think I'll still go to
Yeah.
PAX just 'cause it's in my backyard. But that's pretty much it for the year. Yeah, Circle DC unfortunately fell off because it's right around this time of the year. And it just didn't work out.
And so from a future of the channel perspective, like do you see more playthroughs, reviews, rankings? Like where do you want the channel to go in the future?
Yeah, I think I'm a person that likes to go pretty like in depth with videos and kind of expounding on how what I think or feel about a game. I think that's probably not the most productive way to do videos. Maybe I think doing maybe more kind of batch type videos, like multiple games, quicker thoughts, I think is something I'd like to transition to. I have like a huge backlog of stuff to cover and review copies and all that, and it's like I like to give every game the kind of like love and attention and thoughtfulness that I feel like it deserves, but like it's hard to balance both. So I think transitioning into maybe quicker, snappier type content that I can do quicker is probably going to be like, I should be doing it already. And I think like this life change is also going to kind of push me in that direction.
So when you're, I'm assuming before you got into YouTube, you watched it, you were a consumer of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what were the types of videos that got you excited? Was it this deeper dive stuff that you started
Yeah.
with or are currently doing?
Yeah, so I do. I like you give me an hour or two long video and I see that on the subscription fee. I'm like, okay, I want to hear what's going to go on there. Yeah, I think I really enjoy going deep dive into things. Like, I think it's like either be it lore or like specific topics and stuff. There's something interesting about someone doing that research and going really deep into a topic that I find interesting. I think from I think as I started actually like creating stuff, I think there's also value in those like quicker bite-sized, like just get that information out to people as well. But like getting into it, I think I love long form videos.
I agree with you. And the reason I asked that question is that's exactly what got me into the hobby. I, I was so, well, basically I found Quackalope's channel and all of his root content. And I was just so like overwhelmed with how much thought went into this, what I call a piece of art. And there's so much complexity and layers, and peeling back that onion to me was just so exciting. I watched everything root I could possibly get my hands on. I watched hours and hours of playthroughs. I felt like the stories that game was telling was super interesting to me. That's the content I loved, but I don't think that's the content, for whatever reason, rewards you if you want to kind of be successful or just continue to grow at a decent clip. Like, why do you think that is? At least, are we weird that are we the only ones that enjoy that type of stuff?
Part of me wants to say that, but then I think I'm also fortunate that a lot of those like Final Girl buying guides are like some of the best performing like channels, videos on my channel. But on the other hand, I will do like a list or like talk through a campaign page or something, and it's like I can edit this in like half an hour and it's done, and it does just as well as like a playthrough that took me like 6 hours to edit or something. So I think it is tough. I think like managing your like content pipeline is kind of important to do, and not like miring yourself in these like in-depth videos. But I try to keep one or two like I would say like long-term projects going. So like one right now that I've been working on is I have the Metal Gear Solid board game, and I love Metal Gear Solid as a series. It's like very important to me, and I love it. And like trying to analyze this board game from like such a I think like influential video game, and like doing those comparisons, like I've been writing and like filming parts of that video for a while now. So I think having those like passion projects in the background, but also managing it with like, hey, I got to keep this kind of stream going and keeping people interested and getting news out there.
Yeah, that is the balance, right? And I've been trying to strike that as well. And I think it's tough because I think it also will drive hardcore people from your channel when you go away. I was so stuck with chip theory, content, that when I then pivoted, people would kind of like left and were less interested. But then some of those stupid list videos were the ones that just completely blew up. And I told this story in the last podcast that I haven't released yet. But I was in the middle of, let's see, I was editing it. The video was essentially like games I wish I would have started with, like 9 games I should have played instead of these other kind of like typical beginner games or introductory games or whatever it might be. And I was in the middle of editing, and I was like, this is just a piece of crap. I was not proud of it. I was, I get excited when I've like created this cool video and I've like edited it well and I really thought through it and it was deep. None of those happen to do really well. I have some bangers on my channel that nobody has seen, but this stupid list video, I think it's up to 150,000 views at this point, and has probably driven more growth on my channel than most other videos. And it continues to get views to this day. Almost didn't get released because I hated it so much as I was in the middle of editing it. And that's the tough part. That's one of the things with cardboard I'm trying to solve is like, I know there's an audience there, but I don't think the algorithm has any idea about board gamers and this niche and preferences and really what are those through lines from game to game that should connect somebody to make them interested. Like that's one of my main goals is trying to figure out a way. And by the way, thank you for being, connected on there to bring our audiences together and share them in a way that really helps people find like-minded creators and content that they're super excited about. Right now, and maybe you can kind of speak to this on what your perspective is, but I think the algorithm is really weird. Like it's also, if you look at that front page, it's so short heavy on top of all of this. My videos are doing different things in the last year than they were before. I don't know. Have you seen any sort of changes in your performance?
Yeah. I think from a personal day-to-day YouTube user, it just feels very temperamental. Like if I start looking at one thing, I will get bombarded with that one topic over and over and over again. And even things that I'm still passively interested in, it will just stop showing me that stuff. So I think from a user perspective, I see that. I just upgraded whatever my CPU, and I looked up some tech videos, and for the life of me, I cannot purge these tech videos. I'm done with this project. I don't want to see any more of it. And it makes me wonder, people are interested in these board games, and maybe they're looking into it, but they look into something else, and then it kind of washes over these other topics that they're how do you keep that long-term interest going? I think from performance day to day, I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest analytics nerd. I probably don't digest it as well as I should. I think my core videos, Final Girl stuff is kind of what I want to make sure that I'm that's the audience that if someone's interested in Final Girl, I hope that my videos are showing up in their feeds.
Have you searched it by any chance to see if you are?
Yeah, I've gone incognito and looked up.
Yeah, okay.
Final Girl stuff, no
there's
cookies.
some where I'm I'll search myself and it's a big video and it's how is my SETI video? It's one of the best. It's incognito. It doesn't even show up in search. I just can't even wrap my head around it sometimes.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just lucky that there's not a ton of Final Girl videos out there, to be totally honest. For as I think it's the highest rated solo game. I think it's a pretty prominent board game, and I'm surprised there's not as much stuff out there for it, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, I am so excited when a channel like yours exists that goes insanely deep, but I do know that's not conducive to kind of, competing with the big guys and getting those tens of thousands of followers and so on and so forth. It's tough because the things that get me excited about this isn't just playing the new thing. It's about going deep on those really cool games that deserve it. Final Girl is absolutely one of them, where there is so much to explore. And I know people probably just dive in and watch a ton of your videos at once because they happen to be really into it. But when they search that CPU, that will override nearly everything because the amount of advertising that they can put behind a CPU is so much greater. So they're going to absolutely flood you with all of that because those advertising dollars are just worth more. Anything related to board games is probably not getting through that algorithm whatsoever.
In the volume of niche interest, right? Board games are relatively going to be on the lower on that volume. Yeah. So
and the way those ads pay out is they have these avatars of customers, and the tech customer, the pay per click is so much higher than basically anything else, right? And I think if they even have a board game avatar that they can kind of sell ads against, I'm sure it's pennies on the dollar compared to some of these other big guys for sure. But I don't know, that probably is too inside baseball, but I put in lots of timestamps on these things so people can jump through there. Okay, so one of the last things, and you mentioned this early on, and something I'm really excited to talk to you about is your love of horror. I figured, based upon just looking at some of your top games, Terrorscape, Final Girl, Arkham Horror, I believe was up there as well, that you had to be into horror, and that's something that I've been getting into, dabbling a little bit more. So what is it about horror games and the genre in particular that like drags you into that space?
Yeah, so for me, I think horror is a genre. My dad indoctrinated me way too young into horror movies, so I'm going to blame him for.
Okay, what was the one? Tell me right now. What was the one that got you?
For me, it was Halloween, the original Halloween.
Okay, one.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The
Way
OG
to go,
Halloween.
Dad. How old were you when you were introduced to Halloween? Poor thing.
I'm going to put it on record here. I must have been like 6 or 7, probably.
Really?
Real.
Did that
real
give you
small.
nightmares?
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, the one that really haunted was Child's Play with like the killer doll.
That was
That
so
is
scary.
That as a kid is like the most terrifying thing.
Dolls were terrifying. Even the Goosebumps, oh gosh, the dummy, I forget his name. Slappy. He scared the crap out of me, man.
But I will say I think horror as a genre, and and I'm pretty big into like movies and TV outside of board games. Like I feel like horror and comedy are like the two genres that I feel are the most open to experimentation. Like I feel like there's so many subgenre of horror, and they're able to push the limit through it, like like gross visual content or characters or stories they tell. I feel like horror is like the biggest playground for creators to tell those types of stories, and I just feel like there's a horror movie for everybody, and I think exploring those stories is just something I love. So like I do keep up like a lot with horror, like media in general. I think from the board game space, it's kind of funny because again, I don't think I've ever been scared from a horror board game, to be honest. So I think it's a hard medium to translate a lot into tabletop format, to be totally honest. I do think Final Girl does it really well, and it does kind of have a huge crutch where it does pull from a lot of established like horror icons and imagery that I think they're able to tap
a little
into that.
bit, right? How they get away with that, I'm not sure. There's some
More
crazy
than
ones.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think I think they do a good job. I think it would have been easy to slap that imagery onto a game that doesn't kind of quote unquote deserve it, because I feel like mechanically and the stories it tells are very true to those horror stories that you're able to tell. Like Van Ryder puts so much love into like every card and the references, and like I think it's such a passion project that it works in that case. But yeah, I think my love from horror in board games is maybe more superficial than my love of horror as a general medium, because again, I think the reason I love horror versus the reason I love horror board games is different. They just happen to cross over a lot in like just general.
Well, I mean, is it because you're able to tell your own story from a horror perspective, as much as it's not the atmospheric, scary, creepy, all of the parlor tricks that you can, throw at an audience, but you're able to kind of live through it a little bit. Final Girl does give you some really good stories that, when you're in the midst of a slasher film, they're against all odds. The Final Girl shouldn't win. In a lot of cases in Final Girl, the game, they don't. But but when you pull that off, it feels like that miraculous ending.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because when I think about it, even most horror board games, I think do a good job at kind of telling that narrative story. The couple of the ones that you mentioned, like even Terrorscape, right? That's a multiplayer game where it gets even more difficult to tell be scary, right? When you have a group of people around the table. But having someone play as the killer and like hunt people down, and that little bit of like whispering that's going on the other side of the table. Again, Terrorscape is a hidden movement game. Again, I've not explained anything about this game. But again, I think the ability that horror has to tell stories, I think in board gaming really works well. And Arkham Horror, again, is very narrative heavy from just storybooks and stuff. But the character you build in that game and the trauma and the stuff you go through from mission to mission, right? You're telling that story with your character throughout all of it. And I think just horror is such a good, strong medium to do that in.
100%. So as somebody that wants to get into, like, throw board games aside, let's meander a little bit into media. Somebody that wants to get into horror, like, what is your recommendation on kind of like the IPs or the stuff to go and experience? Because I've started to dabble a little bit, and I'm interested in what you'd have to say.
That's interesting. And I actually use a technique that I think we do as like board gamers trying to get people to try games is like it's almost not even giving them a blanket recommendation. It's kind of like, what are you interested in outside of horror? And then there's usually like a horror movie that kind of fits within that sort of niche, right? It's like, okay, if you like kind of like ghosts or vampires or like musicals or like, right, there's usually like a sub niche of a horror movie that like works really well. So like my favorite like go-to recommendation recently has been like Sinners. I don't know if you've seen that or heard of it at all.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like that is it has like a lot of strong like musical elements to it, historical elements. Like if people like historical drama pieces, like Sinners is awesome for that. And it also has vampires and like cool gory horror stuff. So that's almost how I approach it, is like, what else do you like that's not horror? And then try to like tailor it from that.
Do you think that starting them off with something like Sinners, which is such like this high production, you won all these awards, is almost like gonna let them down as they go go further into the genre? Or is it a good starter? Like if you're really trying to get someone dorked out and into the space, is that a good place to start with such high production?
I think so, and it's actually kind of funny how many parallels there are with when we talk about board games too. Because like, let's talk about horror as like, people think of slashers or like kind of like over the top jump scares and that sort of thing. And like horror is a much more mature medium, or it can be goofy and silly. You can have like dice chucking board games, or you can have these thoughtful Euro experiences, right? And I think it lives on that entire spectrum. And it sounds a little silly to say like you're trying to prove horror to someone, but I think if someone sees this like high production, well made, thought out like thing, they can kind of think of the genre as more than just like, oh, Freddy Krueger with knives on his hands is going to come and like kill you or something.
Right.
So I think it works pretty well in that perspective. Another one of my like goated horror directors, Ari Aster. Like Hereditary is like my favorite horror movie probably of all time.
Okay.
And that's a very heavy. It's a heavy movie. Like I would be careful with who I recommend it to, but
right.
It's just such a varied, just medium overall. So like, yeah, but I think recommending like a high production, quote unquote, like prestigious movie, I think is a good of place as any to point someone.
It's funny you do make that parallel with board games, because that is like Wingspan was this high production, beautiful game, but there's probably so many other games, and I probably can't come up with them off the top of my head, that I would have never looked at in a million years until I was like caught with a particular game, and you start to slowly make your way, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at Terrorscape and it's high production, but I would have never thought to be excited about a game like that, because I know I like hidden movement and I like the stories that can tell from other games I've played, and I'm starting to like horror in general, and so maybe that would be something that all of a sudden I want to try. It's like you almost desensitize yourself a little bit of like these preconceived notions of things, because you got in this totally different area. How you get from Wingspan to Terrorscape, I don't know. It's been years. There's been a lot of different plays, but that I'm interested in it now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I never really kind of seriously thought about the parallels kind of between those two kind of like passions that I have.
It'd be an interesting video. How do you get someone from Wingspan to Terrorscape or Wingspan to Final Girl? Like it would be just crazy enough to work. I don't know. You can have that one if you want. I don't know if I can spend that much time on it. Are you into this, like, I don't know, gore porn that is like Terrifier? I'm kind of scared to watch it, but I'm also intrigued a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's definitely not a franchise I'd recommend to someone.
No, that's like when your kink gets out of hand. Like you're really going far.
I think you got to be desensitized to it already, and kind of just appreciate it from like a different like the way you consume or watch something is kind of like, I think you kind of got to be a little primed for like what you're going into. Like if you just kind of appreciate it for like the special effects and over the top goofiness, kind of like schlock that it is, like there's a lot of joy to have there. If you're going into like, oh, I'm gonna get under a blanket and like get scared, like I think like you're not in the right space for that. Like I think it's just knowing kind of what you're getting into. Honestly, Terrifier being so popular is kind of kind of crazy. Like I'm so surprised it's
Isn't it nuts?
kind of taken off. It's like it seems.
I've
so
only seen
neat.
clips, and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, and I've been following that for so that character, that like scary Art the Clown character, was in like a short. There was like I'm very big into anthology horror. I think there's something so cool about these short little vignettes that directors get a chance to tell, and these like little self-contained story. And that character is from like some 2012, 2013, something like that anthology horror movie, and then it got like spun off into this huge franchise now. So it is cool to see like these weird niche things kind of blow up in popularity.
Yeah, that one for I don't know. I think it's just TikTok. Like I just started seeing stuff, and I was like, this just looks so bizarre. And then I learned like some of like I essentially heard people describe the crazy kills, and I'm like, but maybe. And actually, I think the turning point for me, oddly, was the most recent remake of Final Destination. Did you see that by any chance?
Yeah, solid.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and I really loved like I don't know, this juxtaposition of humor and these crazy kills that happen. I was literally laughing out loud in the theater, and I'm like, oh, there's something wrong with me, but I kind of like this. But I was honestly like scared of horror before seeing that, and since like Barbarian for forever, people were like telling me like, oh, you have to see it, it's the most amazing thing, but it's a little weird or whatever. And then after watching it, I think I saw it after Weapons. I was like, oh no, that wasn't bad at all.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm in the midst of that Wingspan to Final Girl journey right now. So I don't know if you have any recommendations. I loved Weapons, by the way, which is probably this totally different thing. It's just, I thought it was brilliant. Do you like the Barbarian weapon stuff? Is that like
Zach
saying
Cregger
you like Catan and board gaming if you're into horror?
No, the Catan of horror, I would say, is like The Conjuring or like Insidious, like those kind of like Blumhouse kind of affairs. I would say those are like the mainstream. And again, I don't want to like sound pretentious. Like I enjoy, there's joy to be had.
No, do it. Let's get into it.
But I would say like the more niche horror, like I think it's funny that Zach Cregger, that director, came from comedy into horror. Like there's such a cool kind of like shared DNA there. I'm trying to think of what I've seen recently. My favorite movie, again, Ari Aster. If you haven't seen Hereditary or Midsommar,
that's the other one that like started it for me. That actually is the one. It was a few years ago. I saw that. I was like, this is so crazy, but I kind of like it. I was like avoiding horror until then. I thought that was so freaking good. So no, I have not seen Hereditary, so I need to watch that.
You owe yourself to go see Hereditary. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. How old is Hereditary?
I want to say 2017, 2016, something like that. Yeah, it was.
Is it better than Midsommar?
I think so.
Okay. But is Midsommar high on your list?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I think it's also the setting. I love like ritual cult horror is so.
That setting was so beautiful, and just like, speaking of juxtaposition of like that beautiful setting and this crazy cult, like I just loved that whole thing, and like the crazy way they like used the mushrooms and all of that. I just thought it was great. It was really great. Like bending like what's real, what's not. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, and I will give you one other recommendation before we turn into a movie podcast here.
This is no one's listening to this. This is just for us. Don't worry about it. They've already skipped.
Yeah. If you like Midsommar, you should definitely check out the original Wicker Man if you have not seen that.
Okay, no, I have not.
73. It is so like the Nick Cage version is
73.
Like yeah,
1973. You're saying?
Yep.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So
sell me on it.
The Nick Cage remake is kind of like a meme where he has like the bees on his head, and he's like, "Not the bees, not the bees." But this original Wicker Man is like this police officer that goes into like this like deserted British, or not deserted, but like this rural British isle to like find a missing person. And the whole island is part of this cult. And he kind of gets like wrapped up into this like whole like kind of conspiracy with the cult. And like they're doing this like, burning a Wicker Man is like kind of what it's named after. But there's such a sense of uneasiness as he's like investigating the town, and it has such a cool folk horror like costuming and masks they wear, and it's just a really really cool movie.
I'll have to check that out. Okay, so Hereditary, original Wicker Man. Where else do I need to go?
Another, are you into zombies at all?
Yeah, I think I've been like I've fantasized about the end of the world and like what I would do in the midst of all of that. I was a very early, in fact, day one adopter on Walking Dead, and we know where that went. But yes, I'm a big zombie fan.
Yeah, my favorite zombie movie is the OG Dawn of the Dead. If you've not seen that,
is that the mall?
That is the mall one.
Yes, I do love that one. That's a good one.
Yes. Yeah, the OG is awesome, and then Shaun of the Dead I think is actually like my favorite horror movie, or not?
Is it
favorite
really?
zombie movie of all time. I feel like it blends that comedy and like true like horror dread really really well. Really,
I
smart movie.
love when they can bring comedy together in like a, I don't know, not a cheesy way, and make the kills terrifying yet hilarious at the same exact time. Like I think it's this really fun dichotomy. So okay, I think I've seen Shaun of the Dead. I certainly have seen tons of clips of it for sure. Yeah, we could go forever on zombies. I had one more that's slipping. No.
I'll give you one more. I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep giving you recommendations.
Yeah.
Two movies: Talk to Me and It Comes at Night. I like those two a lot. So Talk to Me is like
It Comes at Night sounds really familiar. But go ahead, tell me about Talk to Me.
So Talk to Me are these two like Australian YouTubers that like made videos, and now they have like started making movies. And they have a second movie that I'm blanking. It came out last year. I'm blanking on it. But Talk to Me is this cool like kind of possession story that's kind of like this like analog for like addiction and that sort of thing. So it's kind of cool in that perspective. And then It Comes at Night is a really kind of small movie about this family trapped in a cabin, and there's like this weird infection going on, and they kind of have like the survivor.
Is it the dad that gets infected?
Yeah, or maybe the son. Maybe I forget who gets infected.
This sounds so familiar.
Yeah, it kind of did. The
Oh yeah,
rounds.
I've seen this one. I love that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's been part of my recent journey.
Have you seen Late Night with the Devil?
No, that was one that I saw the preview. I was like, that does look pretty cool.
It is cool. I'm a big fan of found footage horror, and that one's kind of like that, where it's like this talk show that kind of goes south overnight. Really, really cool movie.
The cabin thing reminds me of like in It Comes at Night. They were like going out to their father's cabin or something like that. Was that what the
No, so it's like some plague or something, and like they can't go outside. And then I think they go out to get supplies, and they find someone, and it's like we can't leave them alone. That kind of like conflict of like giving up humanity.
Yeah, and then infects everyone else.
Yeah, and it ends up infecting. Of course, it infects everybody.
Mm-hmm. Another one that I liked that had a cool vibe was, I think it was The Ritual, where it was like these guys hiking. And then they like find the weird like artifacts and trying to take the shortcut through it's another TikTok thing where I just like, I saw these clips. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know that it was the best movie ever, but I really liked the setting and the idea of it. Yeah.
And if you like, again, if you're adventurous, it's a little bit of a weird one. It's called Ghost Watch. Have you ever heard of this before?
Mm-mm.
It's presented like a show. I think it came out in the 70s. It is presented like a show that is on the BBC, and it's told like a real-time news broadcast. And it's Halloween night, and this BBC crew is like monitoring this house that is supposedly haunted. And it kind of starts where like they're playing it up. It's like, okay, they know it's like a Halloween joke broadcast for their show. And then like little things start to happen that are like, oh, this actually is haunted. And it's a really slow burn, but something about that novelty of it being presented as this real news broadcast is really interesting. And it's British, it's a little weird, but it's really cool. And
Is it sort of in that found footage lane that you like so much?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely kind of found footage feeling.
Were you a Blair Witch fan, or is that the Catan of found footage?
No, I think Blair Witch is pretty awesome. Still,
Okay.
that's
All right,
a trailblazer there.
Yeah. All right. So
Paranormal
this,
Activity is the.
yeah, this segment, the get to know you, has gone like 40 minutes over what I was. I have on my outline here, so I think it's time to roast your top 10. Although, as much as I would love just to keep talking horror, like that's I like to get deep into stuff. That was kind of going back to the parallel is the deep videos, the Final Girl videos, going incredibly deep on a particular subject. I like to hear when people are just totally dorked out on something that 99.9% of the population would never, and probably will never hear of Ghostwatch. But you start to fall so far down the rabbit hole that you start to appreciate like these really deep nuances that most people, if they just kind of come across this, they're like, this thing's so stupid, I'm not going to ever watch this. But when you start to get deep into it, you're able to appreciate all of those. That I get excited about that. I mean, literally, I could talk to anybody that's deep into pretty much any subject just to like see inside their brain and like what's going on there that you are so deep here. Have you always, you did say you were always a horror fan. Were you always this deep, or has it like happened over time?
Over life, it's happened. It's just gotten deeper and deeper. I think I've always been pretty niche into it. Like even when streaming first started, like that was such a good time. Like you get so many weird horror movies on streaming services that like are just independent and like they're just trying to fill their streaming stuff, and a lot of it's awful. But sometimes you just see like little glimpses of cool stuff, and in a lot of ways, just to bring it back to board games, it's kind of like I think I might be a little overly positive about games, because I feel like even games that I don't love, I usually feel like there's usually like a diamond in there. Like there's a smart idea. There's something that like motivated this designer to make this thing that I'm usually able to see. And I feel like I like finding those like little gems. Even like the whole system might not work, I feel like there's cool things to find in those smaller games.
Right, 100%. And like knowing that somebody came up with these ideas sometimes is just so, well, and the horror genre is probably just like horrifying that someone's brain is that messed up, but also brilliant at the same time when they're able to kind of put these stories together, or in board games, help a player tell stories through their games. And even if they are broken, I think there are a lot of things to kind of appreciate in a lot of different games. I think we're spoiled in those regards. Okay,
absolutely.
So I promised that we are going to segue here. I'm bringing up your top 10, and I noticed you were making some late changes to this number 10. You thought you got out of Biblios sitting at your number 10 spot, but guess what? You didn't.
I'll defend it.
Okay. So, and that's where we're going to start. We're going to, you it looks like you have a tie now with Sleeping Gods Distant Skies, which I absolutely loved. So I'm not going to roast you there. That one gave me hope for narrative games, something in which that I didn't like.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't really appreciate at all.
Sleeping Gods is the first narrative game that had good writing. There is so much bad. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of bad writing in narrative board games. But yeah, Ryan Lockett's awesome.
I enjoyed, like, I think my video concept was like the thumbnail was just like this whole cake that was the box, and I had just taken a sliver out of it. I played an entire campaign, and it felt so much like I just barely got to touch this world, and it told me just enough story. Like, I never want to play a game that gives me a page to read unless it's like, hey, this is the first setup thing or whatever it might be. I don't have the patience for that. But this kind of combined the narrative with really fun mechanics. I really enjoyed the puzzle that that combat had in this game as well. So it's like, I guess my only roast would be like, why isn't it higher for you?
I think it's just I haven't played it enough. I think I have one slice of it like you do, and the impending baby is not boding well for getting more campaigns done.
Yeah,
I'm also
go ahead.
I'm also in on Silvernath, which is their next kind of big campaign project. So I got some homework to do.
Yeah, I wanted to cover that and I just like didn't have time to do it. And I don't get a lot of stuff from publishers, but they're always asking, and I was like, oh, I feel so bad because I do want to see what that. I'm actually happy that I didn't, because I want to be fully surprised when that kind of comes out. In fact, I didn't even really pay attention to it for that reason. I was also building cardboard, so I just had no time whatsoever. But anyways, I'm gonna let that one slide. And you also tied it with the unmatched game system, which is a total cop out. And I guess I will roast unmatched game system. Do you feel like that game just plays itself? Like, it's just so obvious, the cards, like the card play to me is not particularly, I don't know, rewarding. Like I don't feel smart when I play that game at all, but I do have TMNT and I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I will continue to play it.
Yeah, I think it's a victim of the amount of options that are in the game. So I am fortunate that I have a group at my store that is into Unmatched and will play the same characters, and we'll kind of consistently play against each other. And I think that's where it really shines. Like it's kind of like the decks are like 30 cards or something like that, and there's a lot of abilities. There's a lot of things to keep in mind, right? If some character has an uber powerful card, it's like, okay, I didn't know that was coming. I think because I played enough that like a lot of the characters I start to get familiar with, it's more of a counter. Like I feel like there's more of a dance in that battle where like I know they have this card that does this thing. I can kind of plan around it. So I think it's just a victim of people. Like the characters are cool, right? You want to try all the characters, but I feel like the real strength of the game doesn't come up until you start to do some of those replete plays.
Yeah, and that kind of goes down to like appreciating meta games and depth in games and such. And I to be fair, I haven't given it enough chances. It just seemed. I also just try to play it with my son, and I have enjoyed it more with the adventures of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which just kind of makes it a totally different thing from what you're describing, which is, really deeply understanding what the other player is trying to do and trying to counter that. So I could see that definitely adds more to it. Now, which one is your number 10? Is it, they're both rated at 9.1. Is it the unmatched game system or Sleeping Gods?
I think Sleeping Gods would have to take it there.
Okay. And if you had to pick one unmatched set, what's the best?
The OG Tales to Amaze with the Mothman and the UFO. Gives me that horror.
So you do like the adventures then?
Yeah, and I think what's really smart about the adventure system is I think the enemy deck is like 8 cards or so. Like it's a pretty small deck of cards for the enemy. So you kind of get into that like, okay, I know what Mothman or whatever enemy is going to be able to do, and you're kind of able to build that strategy into it. So I think it solves that little bit of a problem you might have playing multiplayer against people. So no, I like the Tales to Amaze.
When you mentioned anticipation, that's exactly what I was thinking as I was playing Shredder and Krang. I understood what they were trying to do, and I could kind of set up for that a little bit. So it did. The other thing that I really enjoyed in the, because I did play Tales to Maze as well, is it gave you incentive to move around the map pretty consistently. And I think sometimes in these like battle games that do have a map, I play Too Many Bones a lot, or have in the past, there wasn't always incentive to actually use movement. So it became even less multidimensional than it probably should be. Do you have that issue with normal Unmatched where you feel like you're just standing there and punching someone? Or is it just like, hey, there's levels to this game and you should be moving a lot and you just don't understand enough?
I think some of the OG maps have that issue a little bit. I think a lot of the newer sets, they've added a lot of new, I don't know what sets you've played, but they've added a lot of new map elements that kind of challenge you to move around the map or force your opponent to move around the map. So I think some of the maps are definitely, you can get like paralyzed and like kind of just go back and forth in one spot. But I think a big part of the game, and a lot of characters have like some type of like disengage mechanic where you're able to like get away from a character and like recoup cards or something like that. But yeah, I think some of the older maps do suffer a little bit from that. Hey, let's just like bash heads.
And I think that's like just like a board game problem in particular, because like in video games, the movement is because they are so much more dynamic. I think about, I was thinking about like, how do you build a battle system that felt like Elden Ring, where, you are trying to dodge and parry and all of these other things that are that are related to these really quick dynamic movements. Like how could you get that excitement, in a battle system, which is tough to do. I know some do it. But that movement is such a big part of surviving in any sort of Souls-like game, that it's hard to translate that to a battle board game.
Yeah, I think just speaking of video games real quick, I mentioned before the Metal Gear Solid board game that I've played through, and I think that's kind of like a boss battler, has like in between missions, but boss battler primarily. And I think the way that they do the boss deck is pretty clever, where it only has a certain amount of moves, and you kind of get to start to learn the patterns of the boss as it kind of reshuffles its deck. And I think it does a decent job at simulating that real time, like reacting to what bosses are doing in like more of a video game setting.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you're doing in Elden Ring, and probably basically any video game is you're remembering a move set that they have. There's some sort of like trigger that will show you what they're about to do. And the tougher ones, like the Souls-likes, the move set is so vast that it becomes like you could spend an hour trying to memorize in Elden Ring how many different moves Melania has and what are those triggers that are going to actually do it. Have you played any of the Elden Ring or Souls-likes or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you laughed when I said Melania.
Yeah, you're giving me some flashbacks to play it.
Yeah, oh yeah. I spent although you could over level so much in Elden Ring that
much friendlier that one.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's basically the friendliest of all time and anything that they've produced, but if you tried to just straight up run through that game, it is incredibly difficult. Although I don't think I ever had an easy time with Melania. So anyways, we digress once again. All right. So Unmatched, I'm going to give you a pass on Biblios, even though I said I wasn't, just for time's sake here. Sure. So we're going to start with your number 9, Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle Earth. So this one gets some heat. It's a severely overhyped game. They've taken Seven Wonders Duel and somehow made it worse. One user on Cardboard says. Others say the theme is carrying it, and there's not enough asymmetry. Where do you land on the comparison to Seven Wonders Duel?
So I came to the Duel for Middle Earth. My main way I played Seven Wonders Duel with that, plus I think it was like the Pantheon expansion that added like some god power type stuff. So I came from that into Seven Wonders Duel, Battle for Middle Earth. Making it worse, gee, that's hard.
Yeah. I won't dox them and say the username, but they gave it a 6.9, which isn't awful. You are significantly higher than community, by the way. You're at 9.2 versus the community's 8.1.
Yeah, and I think, and you're going to see this a lot with the top 10, is that I think I'm kind of emotional when I rate some games, and like I play this a lot with my wife. It's one of our favorite 2-player games. Like that is doing a lot of heavy lifting. So it's a lot of fun for us to play. I will agree actually with that asymmetry, and I think they're going to expand this thing that'll kind of, and they've already started to do that with
it's probably planned lack of asymmetry. Yeah. You know how that works.
Like when we were playing, it's like it's kind of weird that like you kind of have the same cards that I have. Like, it's like you're supposed to be these different factions. So I do agree with the asymmetry, but I just think that the overall package and the fact that it's kind of one box that, again, eventually it's probably going to expand past that, but it does feel like a more robust experience, especially from like a base game to base game from the OG.
Does the IP do any heavy lifting for you?
No, I'm a general fantasy fan, so I like it, but I'm not like a big Lord of the Rings nerd either.
Okay. All right. I thought maybe that was doing it. So number 8, you are, first of all, it's a rolling right in your top 10. Like that's a little insane. You're at a 9.3. The community's at a 7.7. This is Three Sisters. It's a rolling right about farming. There's not a lot of community discussion on this thing yet. Sell the audience on this one. Why should somebody who loves horror-themed Final Girl solo games so much? We just went into this like insane, discussion on your love of horror. Why do you like Three Sisters?
This is another family affair, I think. So my wife works in agriculture, so we have like a garden. Okay. We're kind of like that's another kind of hobby that we share. So the Three Sisters like squash, beans, and corn. Anyway, from a game perspective, it's a really smart roll and write. So it has a really cool action rondelle. So you roll these dice and you place them around this rondelle, and as you take the dice off of those different rondelle spots, you're activating different parts of your board, and it is an extremely combo-y game. So like this triggers that, triggers that, triggers that, right? You get these cool chain effects. So I think for me, it's just one of the most roll and writes that I want to revisit over and over again, because I think there's a lot of cool different ways you're able to approach growing your garden. That's as exciting as as sounds, or growing flowers, or getting different shed equipment. It's just a really clever game. And I'm generally a fan of roll and writes, but this is the one that it's a little heavier, but it kind of keeps me coming back to it.
Yeah, I love Three Sisters, by the way. I don't know that I'll put it in a top 10. I like Fleet the Dice game better, which is kind of in this same place. I have Motor City and I've never played it, which I don't know why. It's been sitting behind me forever. We're big roll and write fans for sure. Three Sisters does a really great job of, I don't know, medium heavy, combo-tastic, fun. Like it is a stellar roll and write, and definitely right up our alley. So I won't get
reprint remaster kind of thing soon too. I'm excited to see what
is it really.
I think they're adding some expansion. Yeah, I think 25th Century is doing I know they're updating the art and maybe some like expansion stuff. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it.
All right. So number 7 is Raw. I mean, Raw is just like a top game of all time. You are higher than the community at 9-4 versus 8-2. I don't know that you really need to defend this other than to say, why are you so high on it?
I love pulling things out of bags. You're going to see that as the list goes on. There is something about pulling things out of a bag that just hits my brain the right way. It's fun. The little bit of a push your luck aspect that also is in Raw of starting auctions or continuing to pull out of the bag. It's just so much fun. I love it.
Yeah. It is a glaring void in my repertoire. I have not played it. I am a huge fan of auction in general. So it's just dumb that I haven't played it. So I need to get that thing played. Number 6, you are way ahead of the community. 9.5 versus a 7.5 under Falling Skies. This is the biggest gap between your rating and the community average. It's a full 2 points. Some people say it's a fun, light solo puzzle and nothing more. You clearly see something deeper here. Why so high on your list?
Yes, so the core of Under Falling Skies is dice placement, where you're kind of managing this base and trying to defend against aliens. I think a lot of the fun of it and the depth of it comes from the kind of campaign stuff you're able to do. It's essentially just like 5 or 6 missions, and you kind of build out your base. You kind of like continue to expand it. I'm a big fan of dice placement as a mechanic. Like Castle of Burgundy or Marco Polo. I love dice placement, and I think there's not a lot of great solo dice placement that I can think of off the top of my head, and I think just that mechanic I enjoy enough, and the kind of base defense. That's another thing I like kind of being under siege, or like kind of waves of enemies, that sort of thing. Tower defense mechanics I'm also a fan of, so I think that just kind of hits the right spot for me with Under Falling Skies.
Are you a Kingdom Rush fan by any chance? Speaking of tower defense,
Kingdom Rush, one I just did a video on 20 Strong's Tanglewood, and one of them is very much kind of waves of enemy tower defense, and I got a couple of comments of Rose.
Oh, I have Rose. I haven't played it yet. I need to play it.
Yeah, it's kind of waves of enemies down different lanes that you're trying to defeat. And someone suggested that, and I think Siege of Valeria was another one that is kind of like that kind of waves of enemies defense.
You also mentioned dice placement. We mentioned Ryan Lockett. Have you played Creature Caravan?
No, I actually have it. It's on the.
Oh, you have. Oh, if you love dice placement, it's absolutely stellar. I mean, it's the only problem I had with it was no card market, and it's super dependent on getting the right cards. There's these keywords on cards that deal a lot with scoring, but in terms of dice placement and you expanding your abilities over time and kind of creating personal asymmetry, it's right up there. It's very, very good. So I would, if you enjoy Ryan Lockett and you enjoy dice placement, definitely play that one for sure.
Moving up the list.
All right, so number 5, I am really excited to hear your take on Terrascape. We've talked a little bit about it, but not really about the game in particular. It's something that I just, I saw it on a table and I was like, I got to play this thing. Why do I want to play it? I mean, it does say, one person said good portion of luck with dice rolls, which can make the game a bit swingy, is kind of like the biggest knock on it. And you're about a point higher than the community at 9.6 versus 8.7.
Yeah, so Terrascape is a hidden movement game at its core, where one person is behind this big mansion cardboard screen playing as a horror movie killer, and the other three are playing cooperatively to escape this mansion. Now, I think at the core, hidden movement is one of my favorite mechanics. This spot could have been Mind Management or Sniper Elite or some other hidden movement games that I really love. But I think the theme for Terrascape really works well. And I think that kind of cat and mouse game, the theme just marries that so perfectly of being this. And the killer, you feel powerful. You feel like if you catch these people, you're able to beat them. So there's a lot of good tension in it, but also the survivors have a lot of little tricks they're able to do. So it doesn't feel so suffocating. I think it does a good job of keeping both sides balanced, let's say, right? A lot of asymmetrical games, sometimes it could feel unsatisfying for one side versus the other. But it's a game that I really feel that both sides have tools to approach this puzzle that they're trying to solve. And by the end of the game, the killer is getting all these more powerful cards and these other abilities, and it keeps that stress. I'm a big fan of games that have a good kind of arc or kind of curve that they're going on, that building up of tension that Terrascape does really, really well. It does have some dice rolling, right? There's a little bit of randomness to it in the way that combat is resolved. But I will say a lot of the survivor cards and equipment, you're able to mitigate some of that. So when I think of Terrascape, I never think of the dice, honestly. It's kind of just part of that way to resolve combat, but to me the deduction is really where it shines to me.
So it's 2 to 4 players. Do you have a preferred player count on this one?
Yeah, it's a little awkward. I think you either got to do 1-on-1 or you need all 4. I think having,
oh really,
if you do 3 players, one person, you have to play with those 3 characters, so you're kind of doing that weird sharing thing. And yeah, it's okay, but sometimes then you get a little bit of potential alpha gamering kind of thing of one person wants to control that third character themselves. So I like it 1-on-1 or 4 players.
Do you prefer being the killer or the I don't know,
absolutely.
victims? You do? Okay.
Yeah,
so that is part of the problem with hidden movement is I found at least there is a role that's just more fun to play. Typically it's the person doing the hidden movement, at least in Mind Management. I just really liked to be the person behind the screen every time. You just feel more important and powerful up to a certain extent. But do you see that issue here at all?
No, I think it's more of a consequence of I teach the game, and it's easier for me to teach the game from the one side versus the 3 side. So I think it's kind of always having to be a dungeon master kind of curse where I'm just always cheating it. So it's easier for me to be the killer and kind of guide the game from that perspective. But it is definitely not a game where you feel powerless on the survivor side. They have a lot of cool tricks and stuff that they can do. And it's frustrating from the killer side, but I think it makes the survivors feel clever. They're kind of sneaking right behind your back.
Mm-hmm. Have you played, was it Dead by Daylight video game?
Yes, I do like Dead by Daylight a lot, and I actually demoed the board game at Gen Con last year. It does some cool stuff, but it's not really hidden movement, I wouldn't say. It feels like a pretty different game, I think, than Terrascape.
Really? Yeah. That's what it reminded me of immediately. I've never actually played it, but I've watched a ton of videos on it just because it's just kind of fun. It's just a fun thing to watch. A killer versus people trying to get away, and there's some fun streams and things that happen there.
Yeah.
Okay. So next up is Crokinole. The one criticism is me, actually. I rated it a 7. I recently played it for the very first time. I actually really liked it. I'm just so surprised it's so high on the top 100 in cardboard relative to BGG. I think it's sitting at 46 and it's in our top 10. Why is this in your top 10?
Yeah, I think as a whole, I'm a lot warmer on dexterity games than I think than a lot of people are. I think for me, games versus strategy versus games being kind of toys and for play, I think I feel like dexterity games really push that side of it more, that sometimes it's just fun to engage with. And I just think Crokinole is just such a perfect dexterity game. Like it has just the right amount of kind of rules and nuance to how you need to like, flick these discs onto the board. And it just feels like endlessly replayable. I'm also very spoiled that my local shop has a Crokinole board, so I have the chance to play it more frequently now. But I fell in love with this at PAX Unplugged. I don't know if you've ever been there, but they have a huge Crokinole zone, and they just have rows and rows of Crokinole tables, and that's where I fell in love with it first. And I spent just 4 or 5 hours just playing Crokinole with random people and falling in love with it.
Yeah, I actually had no idea how it played, and it clicked for me when I was like, oh, I have to hit the other person's disc if it's there. You're not just shooting to the middle, which changes everything, obviously. So I actually really enjoyed it. It was actually at my local game store. So, it's good. It's good, but top 10? I don't know about that. So Arkham Horror, go ahead.
If you want to talk about niches, there are podcasts. There's a big Crokinole community. Like you can go real depth into the tech of Crokinole if you want to.
Yeah, I thought it was just a conspiracy with that one Crokinole company somehow paying off content creators to say they need these super expensive boards. But no, I see it. It's super fun. Are you going to get your own Crokinole board?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. If I had this really cool game room, I'd love to have it just kind of set up on its own table. But I was telling my wife that, she's like, what do you do with it? I was like, I think you hang it on the wall or something. She's like, no. No, you don't do that. All right. So Arkham Horror, my good buddy actually said, the core game by itself is fine, ? It's really more of a tutorial. You need to budget at least $150 to get the full experience. The cost of entry criticism comes up a lot on these games. Marvel Champions, I've been a victim for sure. But this $150 minimum hobby, is it worth it? Why is something that it has such a big barrier so high on your list?
So I think the core gameplay, I love it. I think the way that game approaches creating an investigator and building a character, the narrative side of it really just clicks for me, gameplay wise and narrative wise. I think it is hard to get around that the core box and the kind of and there's a little bit of turmoil in the Arkham community right now because they are doing. I got into it when they did the second edition of the core box, and now they are starting Arkham Horror Chapter 2. So there's a new core box, and they kind of have retired all the old stuff. So there's been a little bit of tumultuous times in the Arkham world recently.
And same thing with Marvel Champions as well. They're yeah. It's they're not reprinting many of the core heroes that you needed for these particular decks. So
yeah. So I mean, I think I like it enough that I'm able to justify at least having these sets and the campaigns. I think for what it's worth, I think the campaigns are more replayable than maybe people play them. Maybe they just go at once. I think there's a lot of branching paths. There's a lot of replayability in those boxes if you don't want a ton of different campaigns. I think there's also they also do character decks that are much lower cost, and you get an investigator and all the decks and upgrades for it. And sometimes I think there's ways that you can approach it that isn't as heavily oh, I got to get all these boxes and talk about FOMO, fall into that trap of I need to get everything for it. I think just tailoring it and doing it piecemeal is probably the biggest advice. And I do think for what it's worth, though, I think the core box, if you bounce off of that, I think you'll know if it's worth it to you or not. So I think the core box at least does that does its job well in that regard.
Are you investing in the next season?
Not yet.
Will you?
I don't know. It's one of those box creeps. It is cards, so I can condense them into boxes. I haven't even played the last finale scenario of, let's call it chapter 1, where you fight against Cthulhu. It was kind of the finale of that first chapter. I haven't played through that yet, so I can't really justify going into the whole new system quite yet.
Yeah, are they explaining as to why it would be worth it for people, or is it just kind of more of the same?
Yeah, so they revised a bunch of the cards. I think in kind of a lot of the comic book world, where it's kind of being presented as the new starting place, start here for new players. And I think there's just a split in the community of people who maybe like me that have been into it five. I mean, it's a little bit of an older game. I think the original core set came out in 2016, so we're looking at 10 years since it originally came out. And like, if you have all that content, I can't imagine needing like more of it. Honestly, like by the time you play through all those campaigns, like you probably are ready to maybe go back and visit those with new characters. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see if there's enough appetite from a new audience to adopt the game versus like the veterans like splitting off and saying this is like a good off ramp for me. So it's kind of like a dual edged sword, I think, for this new chapter 2 that they're doing.
I will say it does have me interested that there's like, oh, this is a new starting place. It's something else I could get into and get really excited about. And because it's overwhelming going into that space because I knew what happened in Marvel Champions, and what the problem that happened is to build all of the good decks, you need all of the heroes because they hide some of the good cards in all of these hero decks to be able to build all the right aspects. Like it's a never-ending money pit. Now, starting from the beginning and kind of going along on that journey, to me is more exciting than saying like, hey, there's this huge pool of cards, and to really build the meta deck that's just super fun that, you know, is on the Marvel database website. You need cards from these 5 different characters. Like that's less fun to me. So, you know, I think it's probably a good strategy on their part, but I also see how people could be pissed about it for sure.
I'll pass the baton to you, and you can you can pick up.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I have time for. No, not at all. All right, number 2, Orleans. You think this is basically a perfect game. You have it at a 9.9, probably just to get it underneath Final Girl, but basically you're calling this thing a 10. Of all the boring beige Euros out there, why this one? Especially a fan where Final Girl is your number 1 game, which is such a different experience. Why Orleans?
So I think, right, as much as I love narrative, dice-driven, random, like games that tell stories, like I think part of me, playing like RTSs or like Civilization, like these grand strategy games, right? Like part of my brain, I love Euros. I can definitely appreciate the strategy that goes into games. And to me, I think Orleans just does such a good job at marrying those two things for me. Because at its core, it is this back builder kind of / worker placement route building game. That to me, it's so interesting. I like that it has a shared board. It's a lot of big problem I have with a lot of Euros, right? That multiplayer solitaire that we kind of throw around sometimes. I like that Orleans has a little bit of a shared board where you're kind of competing with people as well. There's certain like thresholds as you add workers to your bag that you're going up these different tracks, also trying to get to them before other people. And I just feel like it marries this strategy of planning your bag, but also not being so down to a perfect science where you know exactly what you're going to get. And just those two things for me just really hit just right.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that you have this as your number 2, but you don't have anything else like it below it. Like this does prove your point. You are an omni gamer for sure.
Yeah, and there's I love Euros. Like I was like Ostia or Concordia or White Castle, like a lot of these other Euro games that I really enjoy, I think are on the cusp. And it's funny that when I made this list, I have never ranked like my top like 100 games or anything.
Me neither.
So when you presented this, I was like, man, what are my top games?
Yeah,
like,
puts the pressure on.
So it's like, it was like I kind of wanted to get a flavor. It's like if these were the 10 games I had in my house, like I would be content with these games. And I think like if I had one Euro, Orleans would be that one.
Yeah, I mean there is a pretty good. I mean you have a 2-player duel game. You've got a great narrative game here in Sleeping Gods, a roll and write, an auction game, a solo dice placement game, hidden movement horror game, a dexterity game. I mean, this is a pretty good, living card game. I mean, this does feel pretty curated. So I do wonder, is this truly the best 10 games, or is this a curation of a wide variety of games that you want to project out into the world as your top 10?
Yeah, to be real, I think it is more curated, and you motivated me to like load up my games into Pub Meeple and start ranking them, and it was like it's gonna take 4,000 matches to get to your list. I was like, I don't have time to do this whole list. So this is like I was looking through my games. It's like if I had to pick 10 of my favorite. These are my 10 favorite. I would say the top 5 are probably more like firm of like yes, these are like my actual favorite games. But I feel like this is maybe more of like a curated list of like 10 of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, it's a good list. Final Girl, it's so one user says it's a decent game. Not sure how much I really enjoy the game loop. Multiple reviewers call out the heavy luck dependency and cascading failure. One bad dice roll snowballs. You give this thing a perfect 10. Is luck a feature and not a bug?
Yes, and we were talking about Elden Ring real quick. Dare I say skill issue for for some people.
Oh, shots fired. Okay.
The game the game does have mitigation. It has ways. I think the trap a lot of people fall into is like so at its core it's kind of a card driven. You're playing cards, you're rolling dice to resolve actions, and you're going by successes or partial successes or failures. And the way that you resolve partial success is that you discard other actions. So it's a lot of kind of hand management at the end of the day of how you have cards that you're able to kind of more guarantee successes. And I think people like kind of just like potentially just roll dice and hope for the best rather than maybe holding back and like waiting turns to build up big hands and then having a bigger safety net. And it's a kind of a joke on my channel. There's this one card called Improvise. And so the dice in Final Girl are 1 through 6. And what Improvise does is that it makes 3s and 4s that are normal partial successes into full successes. So you're counting a much higher probability of rolling successes on the dice. And I feel like if more people just played with Improvise and leaned into it more, like I think they would have much bigger success. So I think it's learning.
It's less fun than attacking right now.
That's how you're gonna end up with your kind of lousy games. And that is not to say that I have not had lousy games with Final Girl that end a couple turns in. It's like, but then it's like, okay, it's this cool horror killer, horror villain. I just got killed too early. So again, I'm able to make fun out of those maybe poor games. But I think that there is some nuance in Final Girl that maybe people like don't quite get early on, and then it kind of spoils the game for them, I think.
Yeah, I think a game like this definitely needs a decent amount of plays. Like I think there's certain games that people will just know out of the gates, but there's other games where you have to understand you have to peel back the layers of the onion to actually really truly understand like what the game's trying to do and what it's trying to get you to do, and like the play space that you actually have to kind of like make decisions and Improvise is a perfect example, right? It's a strategic move, not necessarily like the fun move that you might expect in something like this. That's, I don't know, you're a Final Girl chucking dice trying to kill a bad guy. Like maybe there is some more strategy there, and it's hey, you better get good if you're complaining about this game instead of complaining about bad dice roll.
And I will say, and it's tough, and it's I think something we carry into like any game we play is like how much goodwill you're bringing into that game and how much grace you're willing to give it to like learn the more complexities of it. And like I'm going into it as a huge a huge horror fan, so like I am already primed to want to like figure this game out. And I think that's kind of what it allowed me to get over that hump and really kind of see a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that. Like I think when I was thinking about arcs and why so many people hate it or love it, I figured it was just, some people have a proclivity to want to give a game more time to breathe because they appreciate deep meta games as opposed to, some shallow is a bad word. It shouldn't be like pejorative. It's just like the certain types of people like certain types of games. But in this instance, you are such a horror fan that even that also probably has something to do with you giving it more of a runway, more time to breathe, and just to kind of understand the depth of it. Do you think from someone trying to get into Final Girl, do they need to spend a bunch of money to really get, I don't know, good use out of it? Or is only a couple feature films going to actually like do it for them?
Yeah, I say this as someone with 20 of them now. I'm fully invested.
Do you have everything?
Yeah. So they just ran they changed the model of how they've been doing it, where like they used to do big Kickstarter releases, and this past year they've like staggered them. So what season 4 that we're on now, they've kind of released one every couple months, and it's kind of been more staggered. But to get to your question, I think like probably 2 to 3 sets is like the sweet spot. Like I don't think unless you're like super into horror and the game, I don't think you need more than like 3 sets. Because again, the whole modularity of killer location that you get is I think pretty high. Like that's a lot of game to play through. And I think the again, how much they lean into well-known imagery of horror movies and horror games and stuff. I think, like, okay, I really like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, I'm gonna get this box, and like I'm gonna have a little bit of that inherent interest in this theme that I'm gonna be able to get into it. So I think theme is probably the biggest driver in Final Girl if you're gonna get into it.
Is there enough variety in the different killers and map mechanics and cards and all that to do the full investment and really appreciate the differences that each scenario brings?
Yeah, and I went over this when I was talking about the Series 4 Kickstarter. Just like talking about the different sets that have come out so far and such. And honestly, I'm like I'm kind of amazed. Like, they take, some sets are more complex than others, and I will say, I think the community as a whole, I think season 3 was really pushing the complexity boundaries and like adding newer mechanics to this core system that maybe buckled under its own weight in some of the sets. But I feel like season 4 has really done a good job at like picking one mechanic or one part of the game and doing something really interesting with it. And I think that they still haven't like fully explored, I think, even the core systems and like the little ways they can do twists on them. But that is to say that I think as of right now, like every set has its own like case you can make of it of like why this one is unique and interesting versus the others.
And have you done a ranking video on all of the sets?
So I've done individual seasons and I've done killers. I have been meaning to do all the locations. But I haven't done like every single one ranked.
Have you done a buying guide?
Yes, for all three seasons.
Okay. Well, then I will, instead of asking you that, I will push the viewer over there to look at your buying guide. Okay.
That first season's a little rough, I'll say.
Yeah. What do you mean? The first season video or the actual first season is rough?
That was my first like serious video on the channel, and there's just some production things.
Yeah, well, maybe you need to redo it. I don't know. You're going to have plenty of time on your hands, right? You're going to have like a paternity leave coming up.
Yeah, perfect time to remaster a video.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we are now to about 2 hours in and getting to the meat and potatoes of this. So I don't know if I told you, but I wanted to do the top 3. So hopefully we can spin through this a little bit faster. So on cardboard, we had a kind of like a challenge of the week to basically identify multiple or mechanic combinations that you really enjoy. So we're going to go through our top 3 mechanic combinations, and I'll let you kick it off. However you want to do it, however you prepared for it, you have at it.
Yeah. So the way I approach this is that, ironically, it's kind of hard to find games that don't have like more than one mechanic. Future idea, like solo mechanic games would be kind of interesting to talk about. But the way I approach this is I tried to find games that have 2 distinct mechanics, and those 2 mechanics somehow like feed into each other. Like there's a reason that those 2 mechanics were chosen and that they're kind of interesting. So the first one I'll start with is a game called Watergate. And have you ever heard of this game before?
I've heard of it, haven't played it.
So it is a pseudo like historical war game, I guess, where it is the Watergate scandal, where like one person's playing as Nixon and the other person's playing as the press, and it is a card-driven like tug of war game. And the 2 mechanics that I think this does is, one is like single-time use card abilities, like very powerful one-time use effects, and that core tug of war system. So I'm a pretty big, I think inherently just like my wife and I play games together. We play a lot of 2-player games. I love tug of war. There's something about like the simplicity of like pulling things back and forth and like it's simple, right? It's like a single track, but the way that games are able to play with that is really interesting. And Watergate has every card in the game has like a super powerful ability, and you discard it when it's used. And the timing of those one-time use abilities, and it's also like only like maybe a 12-card deck or something, so you're able to like learn the other person's deck pretty quickly, even after like a play or 2. And I find that excitement of this is right on the cusp of this tug of war track of where I need it to be, so I win that token at the end of the round, is like, okay, do I use the super powerful card, or do I hold it and like maybe my opponent's also going to use their super powerful card? And I just find that tug of war tension plus knowing these like kind of like nukes in your back pocket that you have throughout the game is just a lot of fun. It adds a really cool layer of tension to the game.
Yeah, the idea of that one-time use power is used heavily in video games. Like you'll have that special move that you're like, do I use it now? Is the boss, far enough along that I can use it? Do I have to do it now, or I'm gonna die no matter what? So there's like the YOLO moment that you might have to use it even though it's not an opportune time. That's an interesting combination. I had no idea how that game played, and I'm intrigued. That's good.
Yeah.
So
Add Wargaming Arena too. Quick shout out if anyone wanted to try it.
Oh, it is. And in Cardboard, there is a BGA filter. So if you want to know what's on Board Game Arena, you can go filter. So mine is actually it's pretty simple. It's modular board and grid movement, but it's a really specific subset of that. The first example is Clank Catacombs, and while that's not grid movement, the modular board and specifically the mechanic of exploration that goes along with it is what I think makes it the best Clank game, because it adds this unknown. You don't know where you're going. You can't plan out your moves. You have to explore to go and find the stuff that you need. But the feature game here is Endeavor Deep Sea. I think you covered this as well.
No,
did you cover it? Oh, you haven't? So Endeavor Deep Sea it's a game that I've recently actually my last episode was discussing this game, but one of the core features, it has so many great mechanics, but one of the core features is that you're exploring the ocean, and there's 5 different levels, and as you reveal different tiles, you get a bonus if you're the one to reveal them. You also get to choose between 2. One might fit your game and what you're trying to do a little bit more. You can choose where you place it. Might be closer to yourself or your opponent or whatever it might be. But there's this sense of exploration along with grid movement that is so much more different than the Clank board starting in the beginning and you seeing exactly the path you need to go and really knowing everything that you have to do to get your particular goal. That sense of exploration is tough to kind of simulate in board games in general, and the games that have this system. Another one that comes to mind is Expeditions. It wasn't a game that I absolutely love from Stonemaier, but I did love this idea of exploring tiles, not knowing what's underneath them, kind of flipping them as you go along. Dead Reckoning as well is another one that's similar, where you'll kind of explore and flip these as you go, and it's just fun. It's just like it's not really a mechanic I had thought of until I did this exercise, when I started to just like look at my favorite games. Okay, let me pick one. Let's see what the mechanics are, and then I just started filtering. I was like, oh yeah, those things do the same thing. So, anyways, that's my first pick, and these aren't in any particular order, by the way. So head off.
Yeah, no, I think so shout out to Cardboard too. I did a little write up of like just 5 games that, when you posted this topic, it's like, oh, this is kind of a fun exercise to think about things mashing together, and Clank was on there. I had some other picks just for the sake of the, our chat. But yeah, good choice. So my next one is going to combine I Split You Choose with area control, area majority. And this is a game called PAX. Have you heard of this game? It's kind of a smaller game.
PAX?
PACTS, like a pact.
No.
So this is a smaller game from DVC Games, and the premise of it is like you're kind of playing 1v1, and you are going to be I Split You Choose. So you're going to be drawing cards that are going to allow you to do certain actions that are either going to allow you to place cubes out onto this map. You can move around cubes, or it's going to let you use your little asymmetrical ability. So the theme of this game is really cool. It has this like kind of Gaelic theme to it, where everyone's going to get like this like mythological creature, like a selkie or a dragon or some other like Gaelic creature thing, and they all have like super powerful things. And the interesting stuff, right? I think I Split You Choose as a base is kind of an interesting thing, like that weight of like, how do you value what your opponent, or how do you evaluate what your opponent cares more about versus yourself? I think it's just really interesting. And the ultimate goal of this game is to put your cubes out into these little different areas of the map, and halfway through the game you're going to score them, and then at the end of the game you're going to score them again. And there's something about, I think, area control actually is a mechanic I'm not super hot on. Sometimes they feel a little unsatisfying, I think, like pushing around troops and just like, okay, I have one more than you do. But I think putting the decision space on your opponent of like, where are you going to allow them to put their cubes and move stuff around, makes it just super interesting. And again, I guess kind of similar to Watergate, where you have these super powerful asymmetrical abilities where like, do I give them the power to use their character at this moment, or do I try to hoard this for myself? And it just feels really, really good. It's a lot of great tension in the game, and I think the I split you choose in a head-to-head area control game just works really well together.
You know, I'm feeling bad now because this is a deep cut and all of mine are so obvious. So this is cool. This is 2025 as well, right? This is a new game.
Yeah, I just they happened to be at PAX last year, where I was able to pick this up. So I think it's a smaller company. It's a yeah, newer game, but really, really cool stuff that this game does.
Very good. All right,
Not
so
trying to be a
my yeah, you are, and you're going to make me look bad here because mine are just so obvious. I will say I stopped myself from going deck building, worker placement. It's just so easy. Although there were 3 crazy games that came in right when I was getting in deep into the hobby in Arnak, Endless Winter, and Dune Imperium. Yep. Obviously, you know, we know where those have all gone, especially Dune Imperium and Arnak, but I'm still going to point those games out, but for a different reason, because it's deck building and multi-use cards. I love multi-use cards in particular. I think one of the most recent examples, SETI, does it incredibly well, makes card play so much more interesting, makes the layers of decisions that you have so much more interesting. And Dune Imperium in particular, in this deck building multi-use card area, does it the best, I think. And I think that the idea that you're using these cards to actually go and place your workers, but also there are reveal abilities and that you get a benefit for holding back, not just for the buying power of the cards to kind of put back into your deck. It's also you have these special abilities that makes it so difficult to have to use them to place your worker in the right place, and makes the decision so much more interesting. Than in Arnak, it's another game that I absolutely love, but when you're holding cards back, it's really to go and buy new cards if they have coins or spend them for, I don't know, other resources that you need. They don't have this reveal ability in the multi-use card that just makes it so much more interesting. And I think deck building has, I think Dune Imperium in particular gets hit on like, it's not a really great deck builder, but I think people are discounting like the multi-use nature of the cards and the interest that comes up with those cards. It's not just the kind of marquee ability that you get when you actually kind of play them outright. So anyways, I think a good deck builder nowadays has to have that multi-use card component, because when you draw dead, it feels so bad in a deck builder when you don't have the right synergies, which happens in Dune considerably, especially if you're trying to build that really specific kind of like card interaction. You don't filter through those cards as often. That multi-use nature, I think, saves and makes the game great. So that's my number 2, which is yet again another obvious pick of games. But I hope you have another hipster pick to make me look bad.
No, Dune is one of those games that has converted me into appreciating deck builders more. I was pretty lukewarm on it, but Dune, Arnak, like those games that really take that mechanic and marry it to other cool things, definitely see that there.
Interesting. So you aren't a fan in general, big picture, of deck builders. Like that's not like a marquee mechanic for you?
Yeah, especially like deck builders that are just cards. Like I love Clank. Like, I think Clank, like having that board component, that push your luck element is really cool married to it. But like straight like Dominion, straight deck building does not do it for me. It's kind of boring.
Okay, cool. All right, have at
Catch
it.
flag for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my third one here is actually going to be area control again, and this one is going to combine it with auction, and this is going to be Cyclades. So this is a area control game, but the way you're going to do actions in this is that you need to like bid favor to the gods, and that's where this auction is going to come in. So like you have this gold resource, and in order to do certain actions of these gods, you have to like, bid the most amount. So it's this interesting dynamic of like everyone only gets to do one god action, and it's like timing your resources of like, I really need to be able to like move across the sea in like a turn or two. Like, do I hold back and do the less optimal action now, or do I invest more? And like that balance of both your money resources with all of your troops on the map and moving them around is really, really interesting. I also like the Greek theme, really does it for me too. But mechanic wise, I think auction plus area control is really cool.
Yeah, I'm really sad I have not played Cyclades. That's another one that's on the list. Like, you have these as like a content creator, people expect you've played everything, and there's some games that are just like, oh, I can't believe I haven't played that before. This is definitely one of them. And it's also just the moment that I heard auction and area control, it seems like such an odd pairing that gets me incredibly excited. Are you an Innis fan?
No, that so actually that's the one of that trilogy I haven't played. Kemet I wasn't really big on, to be honest.
Mhm.
This and I have not played Inish yet, but I would like to try it.
Okay. All right. So mine is two, I don't know. They are divisive mechanics, and I'm actually putting them together. I think they're probably two of the most hated mechanics, and I think they pair well together best. And it's take that and dice rolling. People hate the luck of dice rolling. A lot of people hate take that. I love take that, by the way. I just love it. I also love the stories that take that tells in the right setting. But when you combine these things together, specifically in battle, route arcs, and then another new game to me, Lords of Vegas, it makes the take that feel a little less bad because anything can happen. I think both of these or all of these games give advantages to certain players that makes sense, that's fair, but really a bad dice roll could really screw you. And I just really like that about it. Have you played Lords of Vegas by any chance?
No, I'm not familiar with that, actually.
I'm evangelizing that. That is, I played that at Dice Tower West for the very first time. It instantly shot up. Basically, you are inheriting each turn a parking lot and then trying to build, which is basically put dice on this parking lot and build out casinos. There's a grid, and it's sort of an area control game in that you add up the number of pips on the dice, and that's kind of like the size of your casino. But what you can do is other people can build onto that casino, and if it's the right color, you can basically be a part of it. But if you build on it and you have a lower pip dice than all of the other dice on there, you don't own it. The owner isn't the sum, it's the person that just has the higher die count or the pip count. So 1-6 can control this entire casino. And one of the things you can do on your turn is actually re-roll all of the dice. If you pay, I think it's $1 million per pip in the entire casino, and you can have 1 versus 4, 5, 6, whatever, and you have a very slim chance. But the story it tells when you're able to take over that casino is so incredibly fun. It feels awful for the other player, but it's just this drama that that combined with take that just creates some of the best feelings ever, I think, in games, both good and bad. Root has that same problem. Now, if you are the attacker, you get the higher roll no matter what, which is sort of a cop out. But there's also other factions that will kind of help to mitigate that and change the rules, and that's what Root's all about, is breaking the rules. But it to me, it adds some of the most fun moments I've had in all of board games. And I wouldn't recommend this combination to the lighthearted, because if you hate luck and you hate take that, you're really going to hate this combination, and you're probably going to hate all the games that I just mentioned. But it is fun. Lords of Vegas, you could also go and gamble at other people's casinos. They don't have a choice. You basically just roll dice, and you have to roll certain numbers, and if you don't, they win the money, and if you do, you win their money, which is another kind of fun take that aspect, especially because if someone's going to your casino and you don't have a choice whether they gamble or not, it feels pretty bad if they go and take all of your money. Anyways, that is my last combination, which certainly will be divisive, but I just think has created the best stories and the most drama in all of the games that I have played in the hobby. So.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're willing to call out take that, right? It's kind of like a dirty word to a lot of board gamers.
Oh, it is, yeah. Luck, dice rolls, and take that.
And some of the Cole Worley games that you mentioned, like Arcs, I think has a healthy amount of like, I don't know if take that's the right word, but like just kind of like screw you cards that the player's able to use. But I think it adds to that dynamic, like you said, in that story the game tells. So I think when done well, yeah, it definitely has a place.
100%. Like you don't come away on a perfect information Euro puzzle with the same stories. And that is, I think there's a really big difference. And I think it's something, for me at least, I have started to appreciate more and more as I go through the hobby and start to experience different games I wouldn't have probably played in the beginning. And I probably think of myself as a Euro gamer first, but the most excitement I've had is with Take That, dice rolls, all of the naughty words in the hobby. They create these visceral reactions, good and bad, that I think is just so fun. And if you can kind of get over yourself and just like be willing to lose a game for fun, it just is so much fun. In fact, there was a time in Dice Tower West where I was hoping somebody was going to roll that 6 to take over the whole casino to win the game on one roll, because I thought it would just be a good story. Like it would just be like that's the most crazy outcome that I would love to just see happen. It didn't happen, but I found myself actually rooting to lose because of that. So, and that's it. We actually made it. I think this is over 2 hours. I said at the beginning of this, talking with you, I was going to try to shorten it up, and it's just never going to. My wife says, how the heck do you sit out there and talk for 2 hours? Well, you go down a rabbit hole on horror, I think was the what happened. Before we go, do you have anything you want to plug? Board Game Apprentice on YouTube. Check them out. An incredible channel. You might have a little bit of a hiatus, but go check out some of those videos.
Yeah, I do a lot of solo content, but again, I'm pretty omnivore gamer. Anything I find interesting, I like to talk about. And you have motivated me to do a top 50 list. So I've started the process of officially ranking. So
that'll be your best video.
Unfortunately, it probably won't be. But
yeah.
I think it is a fun exercise to do, honestly, to like a little bit of a fun reflection every so often to like really rank them. Especially like you asked me to put a top 10. Like again, I think I kind of pick representative games a little bit. So yeah, it will be very different from this, but I'm excited to do that.
Beautiful. Well, good luck with the baby. I hope you can actually find some time to play games. Really appreciate you being here on this. I really appreciate you being a part of Cardboard. I think I recruited you over to Cardboard, in your comments. So I appreciate you giving it a try. And I thought this was, every podcast I've had, I've come away with like, that was like the best one. I think this is the best conversation. I don't know if anyone's going to actually watch it. Maybe someday, slowly but surely. And certainly probably won't get through 2 hours and 22 minutes. But this was fun, really, genuinely.
No, thank you for shooting a message. And yeah, I mean, we didn't talk much about Cardboard, but I think having I think you're doing a lot of interesting stuff in the hobby space with board games and the stuff you're doing at Cardboard. So it's nice to have another board game resource to say that, at least.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we will end it there, and I'll stop the recording.
Thank you.